I'm the Public Affairs Director at the Chicago Department of Procurement Services. Thanks for joining for our final panel event today, which is creating community impact. Our moderator today is Lisa Freelon, Deputy Procurement Officer for Engagement at the Department of Procurement Services, who will introduce our panelists, and then we'll get started. So, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. It's been a long day, so I hope you've gotten a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. I've attended a lot of workshops and panelists, but again, thank you for being here. I was excited to be a part of this, to moderate this panel because I'm born and raised in Chicago, so I'm always happy to meet leaders who are making an impact in the city, so thank you all for being here. I'm going to introduce, we have Tammi Davis, who's with the Obama Foundation. We have Eileen Chin, who's with RM Chin and Associates. And we also have Bruce Montgomery, who's the Acting Commissioner of the Illinois Commission on Equity and Inclusion. So again, today's panel is about creating an impact. So we're going to talk about ways, what does creating an impact mean, how their respective businesses and organizations are creating an impact, and any opportunities or projects that they know that are making an impact currently right now in the city. So with that, I'll have each one give a brief bio about themselves, and then we'll get started. So I'll start with Tammi.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. How did I know you were going to start down this end? Of course, of course. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, my name is Tammi Davis. I am the Director of Business Diversity and Workforce Development for the Obama Presidential Center and the Obama Foundation. I am primarily responsible for ensuring that the Obama Presidential Center is built by residents and businesses that is reflective of the community, in short. I've been with the foundation now for a little over 2 years. However, I bring 25 years of experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sector in working with economic development initiatives.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eileen Chin. I'm President and CEO of RM Chin and Associates. RM Chin has been in business for over 35 years. It was founded by my father, so I am the second generation owner. We are a minority, women, and disadvantaged business enterprise, so very familiar with that program. And we do business in aviation, transportation, and the building sector, providing owner's rep, program management, construction management, and engineering.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, brave souls, for sticking it out. I'm going to file an official protest about being the last workshop of the day. This is my.
It's not creating an impact, is it?
This is my second year doing this assignment, so they must think I'm a cleanup batter, or they just stick me at the end. But most of my business career has been on your side of the table. I've been both an entrepreneur and worked in the corporate ranks for many years, mostly in the area of information technology, telecom, software, and those types of services. I've had my own firm. I've worked for Fortune 100 companies. And then as I started to wind down my career, I started to teach entrepreneurship. And so for the last even though while still working, in 10 years, I've been a SCORE counselor. I taught the marketing program at SCORE for 10 years. I did a lot of individual coaching and mentoring and working with small businesses with access to capital issues, technology adoption, innovation, those kinds of activities. Serve on the board of a number of different organizations, one of which is Sunshine Enterprises, where I instruct lead a couple of cohorts of the Sunshine Community Business Academy. So very passionate about entrepreneurial activities coming from 3 generations of entrepreneurs in my family. And then last January, Governor Pritzker appointed me to be involved with a brand new commission in the state of Illinois, the Commission on Equity and Inclusion. And that organization took over the activity of something called the Business Enterprise Program. And the BEP program is the program at the state that certifies minority, women, veteran, service-disabled veterans with opportunities for state contracts. And just this year, as we begin to have a conversation about impact, the state increased its aspirational goal from 20 to 30%. So the state has about a $52 billion budget, and about 13, 14 billion of that every year is spent on goods and services. So that's the size of the opportunity that's available, but we are still woefully short of businesses to participate in that program. So hopefully today we'll talk about some of those lanes of opportunity for businesses like yours to get involved with getting their fair share of return on their taxpayers' dollars, because all this money we're talking about didn't come from the moon. It came from yours and my checking accounts. So we need to get a chance to get some of that money back in our hands.
Thank you. So with that, I'll start with the first question. I'll direct this to Eileen. What does creating an impact mean to you?
So creating an impact, I mean, it's, I think that it has a lot of perspectives, but for me personally, it's really focused around people. I think that we need to make an impact, it needs to start with a person who, and depending on what that impact means to them, but also educating people on opportunities. So in my world of, entrepreneur, a business owner, and engineering and construction, there's so many opportunities in there, and we need to educate people on how to even enter this industry, first beginning in the education of it. I mean, STEM is a big push within our industry to engage people even in the junior high and high school levels, to introduce them to what this industry means and all of the things that, how broadly they can go within the industry, and then once they have the opportunity, how to maximize it. Because I think a lot of times as a business owner, we participate in these programs and it's a one and done. And as a business owner, we need some sustainability, and it's teaching businesses how to, once you got the opportunity, how do you capitalize on that more? So that's how I look at impact.
Tammi?
Thank you so much for that question. I think there is a difference between creating an impact and making an impact. First, I believe that in creating the impact, you create the opportunities, you create the solutions. And then in making an impact, you bring those opportunities and those solutions to the communities, to the businesses, and to the residents that are most going to benefit them. That way you know that you have a measurable, sustainable, tangible way of ensuring that you're making a difference. To me, making an impact, creating an impact, it's all about making a difference and changing the dynamics of what currently exists. And that is some of the things that we're doing. So I'm going to continue throughout this conversation to highlight the ways in which the Obama Foundation is making an impact in the community. We created the opportunities to ensure that diverse businesses across all demographics, whether it's minority, woman, veteran, BEPD, Bruce, veteran-owned businesses, and LGBTQ businesses were provided opportunities. And we set goals accordingly. We set very lofty goals. Our overall diversity business goal is 50%. And currently we are at more than 50%, actually 54.3% in committed contracts to certified diverse businesses. So we're creating the opportunities and making that impact by participating in events like this, going into the communities, the business communities, conducting outreach to ensure that the opportunities that we are creating as a result of building a new building on the south side of Chicago, that we're bringing them to the actual residents and businesses that are going to ultimately build it. Bruce?
Well, anyone who's been around Chicago for a while noticed the sharp contrast of activities in various communities. I happen to spend the first several years of my life not too far from this address, a little further west on Washington Boulevard in the Garfield Park area. And some of these communities have remained stark, underinvested, underbuilt, and while there was some activities that caused what was on those properties to be cleaned away for, in some cases, generation after generation, they still remain desolate. You can drive down some boulevards in Chicago, and you can, or just even streets, like when I'm working with entrepreneurs, I tell them, if you want to know all you want to know about Chicago, get on a street like Western and just drive as far as you can drive going south or going north, or get on North Avenue. And the thing about Chicago is these streets just keep going. You can take North Avenue to Minnesota if you want to go that way. And you will see on certain parts of it, you'll see nothing. But then you come to just a little, not that far away, and it's like there's no room to put anything else. It's just so much bustling activity. And certainly right here again and around this facility, the near west side of Chicago, you know, it was a time that United Center was sitting there, well, before it was United Center, it was Chicago Stadium, is sitting there kind of by itself. Then United Center was there by itself. And now the march of downtown seems to be marching west. So I make that point to say, impact to me equals opportunity and participation. Impact is basically another word for change, and I would say positive impact is change for the better. And a lot of people want to see change, but they want to participate. They don't want to see these buildings coming west from downtown, taking out their neighborhood, replacing them with somebody else, and jobs and economic inclusion is all happening around them, and all they can do is watch. Impact to me equals inclusion. That I bet some of those people in some of those communities had ideas about what could go on some of those vacant lots and what kind of businesses could occupy some of that, or even doing the work. When we see things come along that are major infrastructure projects and they see people say, hey, I'd like to do some of that. So impact is another word for change, inclusive change, and change for the better. That means that there is something, as was pointed out earlier, that is talking about people, talking about families, talking about communities, talking about neighborhoods. And I believe that everyone on the face of this earth is born to live a healthy, happy, and prosperous life. And that's what people want, is to participate in prosperous living, not to see some people have that opportunity and they do not. So I think that there's a chance today through intentionality to be impactful. And that being impactful means including people in a vision of shared and mutual prosperity.
Thank you. We'll follow that with our next question. I'll direct this to Tammi. What is needed to create an impact?
Sure, I think that there are, while there are many things that one can focus on in terms of creating an impact, I'll highlight three. One, I think, is inspiration. One of our mottos at the Obama Foundation is to inspire, empower, and connect people to change the world. And so when we localize that mission statement, what does it mean? Inspire, empower, and people to change the communities that they live in. Sometimes they just need hope. And our goal is to change that from hope to action as a result of providing opportunities for employment and procurement opportunities directly with the foundation. Secondly, I think it takes information. You've got to have data, whether it's anecdotal, actually talking to people, talking to the businesses, and that goes back to what Bruce was saying, talk to the people where opportunities are going to be present. See what the people want. Talk to the businesses in that area. And so that leads to relationships. You get information from going straight to the sources. But let's not forget that there are other ways in which you can grab data, particularly if you're looking to go into different markets. You want to be able to research your industry, research the neighborhoods, research the opportunities to ensure that the impact that you think you're going to create actually will materialize. And that comes from gathering data, doing your research, having relationships. And then lastly, again, you have to be intentional about it. And intentionality is very key in order to make things happen. You have to want to do it. That takes intentionality. You have to be very focused, very targeted, not all over the place. If you're going to have an impact in Chatham, why are you over there in Douglas Park? If you want to have an impact on the south side of Chicago, why are you over there in Garfield? You know, you just have to be very targeted and focused, and you have to want to do it. Intention means desire. You have to want to make that impact, and that is what's going to fuel your ability to be consistent and to be very focused to make sure that what you're trying to achieve actually gets accomplished.
Hi, Abraham.
Welcome
This is Abraham Lacy. I'll do a quick intro and then we'll get right back into it. If you could just, this is Abraham Lacy. He's the president of the Far South Community Development Corporation. If you just give us a little bit about yourself, and then the question on the floor is, what is needed to create an impact?
Great. So forgive me, everyone, for being tardy. One way to be impactful is not to be late. But yes, my name is Abraham Lacy. I'm the president of the Far South Community Development Corporation. We focus primarily on Chicago's far south side in South Suburban Cook County. We primarily do our business in three different pillars. One, small business development, which includes we're an Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which we help people get certified to be MBE and WBE and DBE as well. We're also doing housing counseling, so we are a HUD certified housing counseling agency. So we help those who are in foreclosure, those who are looking to buy a home, those who are looking for rental assistance. We've helped over 10,000 residents thus far. And the last thing we do is we do planning and developments. This is one of the biggest areas that we're growing in. We've done more than 20 different plans on Chicago's far south side in South Suburban Cook County. We're very proud that the city has awarded us one of our biggest projects, which is a 286-unit mixed-use development right off the northwest corner of 115th and Halsted. So what does it mean?
What is needed to create an impact?
What is needed to create an impact? Well, one is that's a very sort of multi-pronged question. One, it's going to take, depending on what side of the city you're on or what side of town you're on, it's going to take the investment that's needed. One of the things that we loved about the Invest Southwest was that it created an atmosphere for investment to come into neighborhoods. So in order to make impact, you have to be intentional on a government level, both state and city, to invest into these areas that are needed, because majority of black and brown businesses are on the south and west side. They're not downtown. And so we have to start directing those resources in these areas. Number two, it goes to your point. It goes to data and information. I think one of the things that happens when it comes into our office, when businesses come to our office looking for opportunity, is that they say, we don't know what's happening. And the fact that there's a lot of folks out there saying a lot of information, and then there's those who actually help you get to that information. And so we try to be the one of the agencies of the many that try to get the resources into your hands so that you get all the information to make a definitive decision about what you're trying to do. The third thing, to make a meaningful impact, know your capacity. One of the things that we come across as we do a lot of construction is contractors come in who are looking to do a project, and they want to take on 5 or 6 different projects. And we're like, well, wait a minute, you can only have the capacity to do one. But it's like what your parents usually tell you, like your eyes get wider than your belly or vice versa. It's like you want to take on all this, but you don't have the capacity to do so. Sometimes it starts with one, then you make your way to the second one. And I think we're in such an environment where we think we got to have it all. And right now it's an environment where let's figure out where you are and where you stand, and then you can make your leap into where you need to go. And the last thing I would say is this. It goes to your dedication to it. I think it goes to your point again, so I'm stealing some of your points a little bit. But it goes to the point of dedication. What we find out a lot, that the folks that come through our office, is that if it doesn't happen the first time, they quit and they leave. And one of the biggest problems that we have is that, and especially in our community, the black and brown community, is that the ability to stay in the fight when when it gets tough or when you don't get it the first time. If you get rejected because your application was not enough or didn't meet the requirements, then you try again. You call up. What I do, I annoy the city. They don't like me because I annoy them. Because I call them up and I say, well, what did I do wrong? Give me a little bit of a feedback in what I did wrong so I can come back and correct it again. And a lot of times, black and brown businesses especially, they come into and they say, well, we didn't get it, so that's it. We're not going to do it. So I would say you have to have the dedication to do it over and over and over again. This is not an easy process. It's not going to happen overnight. And so if you're going to make impactful change, you got to stay dedicated. So thank you.
Don't worry, Abraham. I'm going to piggyback on some of your stuff too. But you know, I'm going to bring a little perspective. You know, I think as both Tammi and Abraham have said, it needs to start from the top to have impact. There needs to be leadership and from the top down in terms of being able to so many programs and so many initiatives and so many efforts out there. It needs to have it from the top and pushing it through each level of whatever organization it is. The other thing that we've also touched on is funding. I mean, we need money to do these programs, right? I sit on a number of nonprofit organizations, and all we try to do is try to get money for the things that we want to be able to, the programming and initiatives that we want to do to make an impact. And the other thing when I thought about this is really, I reflected a little bit on why I do some of the things I do. And, you know, my parents came here as immigrants, and there was a community here in Chicago that embraced them, helped them assimilate, and, you know, helped them succeed. And then when my father decided to start his own business, again, it was city programs that helped him start his business and help us succeed. So in our culture and in our family, it's very much a sense of community, sense of service to give back, because we remember what it meant to be able to be helped, right? And so that's really what is important to me. And I think that as the generations here in Chicago, I think about the younger generation. I have 2 kids, and I encourage them to have a sense of community, that it's not just you, it's that you're part of a bigger organization, and you can complain about what it is, but if you don't try to make an impact, even just a little bit, and be involved, then there's never going to be some change. So that's where I come from.
I think we said a lot, and clearly all of you that are in this room are part of the solution. The fact that you would spend and invest time to maybe get 1 or 2 good ideas that you could turn around and employ in your business is a model of what success is all about. Too many of us, as Abraham said, are just ships passing in the night, and we're not really listening. We know what we want, but we're not open and receptive to new ideas and new concepts that may be what the doctor called for today. What was successful yesterday is not necessarily what's going to be successful today. Times change, environments change, things move in the marketplace. We've just all, I would say everybody in this room probably, lived through the COVID experience. I say live because I'm looking at you, so you're all still here. But that was no small feat. That is not anything to be taken lightly. That was something like nobody ever seen. And one of the things that really, and I told our former mayor this, is I felt that no mayor in the previous city of Chicago had to deal with the enormity of challenges that she had to deal with as an incoming mayor. And she stood there strong, tall, one of the first things she did was get a small business grant program together where she could get $1,000 or $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 out to some small businesses while the federal government was still trying to figure out what was going on. And did she get credit for that hard work? Fundamentally, no. Did she get support from the business community while, they were all running for cover talking about what was wrong? And so again, impact is about intentionality. It is about leadership. But also we as a business community have a responsibility to be part of the solution, to do what you guys are doing here right now, and then to share and take this information back to others in our community or outside that community, to find like minds that want to get something done. One thing you have to recognize as an entrepreneur, if you're about impact, is that you have to quickly recognize that those that aren't about impact and get as far away from them as you can, as quickly as you can. Because a lot of people will talk, a lot of people will pretend, but you as an entrepreneur, especially you talk to somebody like Eileen, she knows that she's got payroll to meet. She's got responsibilities. There are people that are depending on her. She doesn't have time to do what she's doing right here, right now, but she takes time every now and then. But you can't take too much time showboating. You got to take the real time of getting the work done to make sure that those on your team are taken advantage of. And that's another thing, that a real key to impact happens as you start to coalesce a team. Too many of us as entrepreneurs have this sense of, like, you know, some spaghetti western. You know, I'm Clint Eastwood. I'm the gunslinger. I'm the guy out there by myself. And you know what happens? You're going to get shot. You know, by yourself. And the horse is going to ride on past like it never happened. If you want to do something in terms of impact as a business, you better be thinking about talent identification, recruiting, team management, team building skills, and get some protection around you. Yes. Because that's when things can really happen. And that's when you're also taken more seriously. Because you're not, they say, well, you know, that's just Bruce. We don't have to listen to him. But if I show up and there's, so who are all those people with you? Those are my people. Oh, I guess we got to listen, because he got a group of people. So that's the same thing. An entrepreneur is really a team builder, a coach, a collaborator, and someone who finds, you know, one thing that I'm so amazed by what former President Barack Obama was able to do, because a lot of people don't realize that this Obama project didn't happen because there's some pile of government money that was waiting to give him this money so he could build this activity. No, he had to go out and raise every dime to be raised. And in this kind of environment, you can understand that that's not easy. But he also, at the same time, had to build a team, because while he was out there raising money, people said, who's running the project? He said, well, I got these folks that are doing some stuff. Okay, then they kind of believe he's serious about it. So again, those are clues to impactful success. Team building, vision, leadership, commitment, and then aligning yourself with trains that you see that are in fact going somewhere. So if there's a train that's not going somewhere, get off that train. If there's a train that is going somewhere, get on that train. It's never too late to change. So you say, okay, I went down a road that didn't really kind of work out. That's okay. That's a learning lesson. You never lose, you always win, because you always learn. Always be learning, always be growing, always be looking out for that opportunity to make a difference.
And
I don't know if we're taking questions yet.
I met Tammi earlier, and so I'm an outsider. I'm a New Yorker. I've been here since December. And so I've had 4 cars since December. So I'm hitting the garage, not other people, but, you know. But what I want to say is I came from big corporate America. And so this is my first time doing entrepreneurship, and then a minority. And this is what I'll say. I said to the firm, why do you want me to join you? They said, because you have big company experience. And do you know what I tell them? You must have Black excellence. The first meeting I had with Humana and with Pfizer, they said, oh, we know you from Marsh McLennan. I said, then what, can you give me an opportunity? They said, we never did business with Black-owned companies because we don't think they have capable people. So I say Black excellence is important. You can't send out letters with typos. You need to fraternize with people who will show up. We need to remember that. You are competing against bigger companies. You are competing against companies where those people have resources, and you must have Black excellence. You must.
Can I add something before we go to the next question?
Yeah.
I promise to be short.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll start.
We got to get the mic.
All right. Cool. So I want to follow up with Bruce's comment, and to your point, you know, one of the things that, you know, when we come across too, and when I was talking about capacity, is someone will come in and they'll bid on $1 million project or $2 million project. And the first thing we look at is your team. Who's on your team? If it's just you, then it makes us question, how are you going to do all this? Because if I hire you and this is my scenario I give them, is if I hired you and then someone else comes with another $1 million project, is your time am I going to lose my time that I have with you? Is my project going to get delayed? And so the first thing is you got to build your internal team and you have to build your network. I know it sounds cliche, it sounds like it's sort of the normal things that everyone says, but it's important. The biggest thing that I did when I first came into this organization, it was just me and one other contractor. And the first thing I did was we got to build an internal team. Because if I start going applying for city funds, they're going to look and say, well, who's managing your books? Who's your contractor for your audits? Who's going to be the project manager? Who's going to be the program manager? Who's marketing it? If you're the one sitting up and saying, no, I'm going to do the marketing, I'm going to do the bookkeeping, I'm going to do everything else, what time do you actually have to do the work? And countless number of times, I think there was a recent article that said and I know I focus a lot on black and brown, but a lot of black and brown businesses have less than, I think majority in Chicago, have less than one employee. Because they feel as though I can do it all. And the other, to Bruce's point, it's, hey, I'm sort of this new sort of take on everything, so I'm special that I can do it and nobody else can do it. And if I can't let anybody else know my secret, well, chances are your business secret is already out. And someone's gonna be exposed to it. So the best thing you can do is, hey, let me start partnering with another group. I would imagine that everyone in this room should be exchanging business cards.
Right, or Abraham, what I did when I first got here, I went to a university and I said, I graduated from NYU. I met some people at University of Illinois. I go, can I have some interns? Can I have some, I qualified to give them credit, educational credit. I can pay you a stipend. But I agree with you, the bench strength is what you're faced with when it is only you. But I think that we are remiss if your leadership doesn't say you must have, you got to do it right. You cannot give corporate America or any kind of municipality the opportunity to say we will not do business with you because you don't do it properly.
Yeah. Are we answering questions?
I'll open it up to Q&A at the end. No, that's okay. No, you're fine. Well, we'll get to you.
Well, it was a question more, but to speak to her point, it's really about training and being able to provide our community with the skills that are needed so that they can meet the bar. A lot of the institutions and programmers that are within our community right now are subpar. And so they are not training the young people and the young adults to meet that academic excellence or that level of excellence that make them competitive. And so, and I'm speaking to that because I'm a not-for-profit, so my goal is to train them. Mm-hmm. And so that is a lot of the problem, that they're not trained. And so being able to have an impact first start with being able to get the mind and heal the heart of the individual so that they can understand that they are impacted just by being. And I just wanted to share that because that's where the lack comes from, the lack of skills.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So our next question, Abraham, I'll start with you, is how is your business and organization creating an impact across the city?
Well, for one, a lot of our programs, since I'm a not-for-profit, so a lot of our program has been geared toward the far south side and south suburbs, but we service the entire county. Actually, in one of our programs, the Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Center, we actually go all the way down to Kankakee County. And we found that out like 4 months ago, and I was like, really? But, one of the things is that we have to understand to make an impact and how we're making the impact is that we try to align the resources with and the opportunities and give those to the community at large. To Bruce's point of, I know I'm referencing Bruce a lot, but to your point, it's, you have to make sure that the business owners and the people who are looking for opportunity understand of what the resources are asking for. So if they're putting out, right now we're dealing with a red line extension. It's about $3.6 billion that's coming to the far south side area. And right now folks are coming in and saying, well, I want to start up, a salon. And I'm saying, well, okay, have you ever done that before? Sort of. I said, okay, so do you realize that on this street there's about 50 of them? So how impactful are you going to be? So we try to say, do you have any interest in something that's already being funded? Can you align yourself with what's already being funded? And so we've worked with more than 2,500 businesses thus far, helping them and bringing them opportunities from both the state and the city level and getting them the funding that they need. The other part is working with our lending. So lending has always been a challenge. And so we have worked with several lenders, some of the traditional lenders like Fifth Third, U.S. Bank, Wintrust, J.P. Morgan Chase, BMO Harris, and then we work with some of the CDFIs. I would advise everyone, if you do not know a CDFI, which is a Community Development Financial Institution, please, by all means, locate one. They have resources that they can disperse to you for smaller projects that you're looking to do. Some of the larger financial institutions that we found out will not give because the capital's too small. They're actually going to spend more money actually dispersing that capital to you than if they waited on a larger project because of the levels that they have to go through. But a CDFI, they can give you that $50,000 you need in operating capital that you need in order to service that contract that you're getting. So by all means, we try, and we have partnerships with Summer Corps, Allies for Community Business, I think that's former Axion, if I got their name wrong, List Chicago, Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives. We work with all of them to bring businesses to them. We look at your business plans. We look at your contracts, which is important because that's what's going to collateralize the debt that you're trying to get on it or the working capital. And we try to help you with operations. A lot of times, too, that you can lose your money or lose your contract if you don't have proper operations. So we have classes that both are virtual and in person that we try to get to folks to say, hey, here's how you run a business. You may do you may have the best candle manufacturing or distribution ever. But if you don't know how to operate a business, then it doesn't matter what your product is. No one's going to see it. So you have to learn the other side of how to manage a business. You don't have to be an expert. That will come in time. But you got to learn the basics, and that's what we try to gear people toward.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And let me just say, it's okay to quote Bruce. Bruce has been around a long time. He's been in this game a long time. Those of us that's been around too, we have often, hey Bruce, how are we going to make this work? Right. How are we going to make this happen? So it's definitely okay to keep quoting Bruce. In terms of creating impact, at the Obama Foundation, we know that we're creating an impact because the data tells us that, and the businesses tell us that. The residents tell us that. So it's not just about making goals and thinking about transactional relationships, but we are really focused on being transformational. And when we go out into the communities and we hear the stories about how an individual was able to get sponsored into a construction trade union apprenticeship program as a result of our workforce development initiative, we know that we have made an impact, not only in that one individual's life, but their household. And so that is creating generational wealth just with one hire. So the data will tell you that. Secondly, we have made sure that diversity is not just a buzzword. We have incorporated it into our operations. And not only do we have goals and a focus to be diverse and have an economic impact in constructing the Obama Presidential Center, but also in our direct procurements. And so I want to take the time to introduce our Director of Procurement and Business Diversity, Nirali Shah. And we have staff here that supports our work, Marissa Christie and Condola King. We also have an individual that serves as our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who's not with us today, Marcus Miller, who focuses on DE&I from an HR perspective. So at every single level, we have ensured that we're making an impact internally as well as externally. So we have that 360-degree view and intentionality within our operations and within the people that we hire. Again, going back to Master Bruce here, who talked about the people that you hire, and that it is important for my New York sister that Black excellence is seen, that it is included, it is involved, and it is engaged, and it is out front and center to ensure that we are walking the walk and that we are talking the talk. So promises made, promises kept. We also know that we are making an impact to be an economic catalyst on the south side of Chicago because of the number of businesses that we've been able to engage at Tier 1. We don't just focus on Tier 2. We want to make sure that prime contractors come into our procurement opportunities at direct contracts with us. We know what that means when they're able to take that contract and try to get another contract, job order, purchase order, or opportunity with someone else, where they can say, we're doing business with the Obama Foundation. But we want it to mean something. We want it to mean that they've passed the muster, that they have established and represented themselves to be capable and have the capacity and have the resources and relationships to do the job that we have procured them to do. But we recognize that some of our businesses need support. So we provided info sessions with access to capital. We have seen contractors on our project as primes now be in a position to purchase equipment, so they become owners now and not renters. That has a huge impact on their ability to be competitive. So now when you are supported and resourced to the point where you can own the equipment, you don't have to wonder about somebody that you're going to be renting from. You don't know how that equipment was maintained, and they're charging you an astronomical amount because you've got to build that into your bid, where others who have better relationships with these rental facilities, now you're able to be really competitive. When we see and hear that type of impact from the businesses, we know that we are doing what we set out to do.
So I'll answer this question as a minority woman-owned business that has fought that fight, right? So there's a lot of programs within the city and the state level, and they're called mentor-protege programs. And, we have felt it as a small business where, we are subs to big primes, and they just want to meet that percentage. And they say, hey, I'm going to give you this role. Well, it's not a capacity building role. It doesn't necessarily help me try to become the prime. So, Chin has been in business for 35 years. We've been very, fortunate. And so when we look now at opportunities, we say, okay, listen, let's put together a team of 3 or 4 medium-sized minority firms. That means we can do better than the big guys, right? Because we care. Because you have the owner who is going to be available if there's any issues, which they won't be. But, you have the owner's attention on it. The big companies, a lot of times, they get the job, they move on. And so we're able to, at Chin, we've put together teams, joint ventures of minority women-owned teams so that we can pull together our resources and go after procurements as a prime. When you manage a project as a prime, it is a game changer because you are in charge of your own destiny. And that can be scary, but that's what's going to make the difference of you building your firm and building your capacity. And we're, at the point where we're able to bring in firms now that maybe have never done a CDOT project, maybe have never done an IDOT project. And we say, hey, listen, you have the bones, we're going to help you grow some meat around it, right? And so that's kind of our philosophy when we pursue work and when we team, that if there's an opportunity to bring on minority firms, that's our first goal. If it's too big of a project, we know we can't, to your point, if we know we can't do it ourselves and we need to partner with a big firm, we better make sure we're advocating for our role. And sometimes, there have been times where I stepped away, because I said, listen, this doesn't feel good. I don't think this partnership's going to work. I'd rather walk away from that work than to be taken advantage of. So that's how the philosophy of trying to include M and WBE firms at all levels.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll return the favor. I will piggyback on some words that Tammi and Abraham have said, because they've used the term, and I feel sometimes people say this, but they don't really grasp, and that's the importance of data. Now, of course, I would say this, somebody who spent 30 years in IT and software and all that kind of stuff, but I think data is critical. And I tell a lot of firms, when I talk to them, I said, every firm is a technology business. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care whether it's B2C or B2B, or in this case, a foundation, that technology is really at the core, and technology is a funny word. It only means know-how, knowledge applied. It doesn't mean, it's not about what something's made of or is on the internet. It just means that you are capturing the knowledge associated with what you're doing, and you know how to do it again. And you know how to innovate using that data to bring something that maybe didn't exist previously. But the point, what I believe Abraham was saying is, he said that there is a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year red line extension going on, and somebody walks in the door and say they want to open up a barbecue joint. And he's like, did you just not hear me? Now I understand you know how to cook, but you may also know how to drive a truck. You may also could come to a place like a Malcolm X or Kennedy King or UIC, and you could get a certificate program and get some skill. And you could say, I want to learn project management. I want to understand program management. And at the same time, I'm going to still do my barbecuing on the side, but I'm going to get a part of this. Is there a role I can play in a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar project that's going right in front of my house? So then the point of the data is, and I'm very attuned to this and my responsibilities at the state of Illinois with the Commission on Equity and Inclusion, because again, with the state having a $52 billion budget, with having a $14 billion annual spend, there are categories where there are diversity goals and no one is in line to be part of that. So while I may have 100 firms certified in some areas, and so we as a community, and I really use community in the broadest sense of the word, that we've got to do some of this data wrangling on our own. Nobody's going to do it for us. We can't go to Abraham and say, Abraham, give me the top 5 areas I can make $1 million in the next 6 weeks. Abraham would say, you know what? I'm working on that. You get your own.
Exactly. I agree with you.
But at the same time, I believe knowing Abraham like I know him, he will share some information.
I'll share a little bit.
Share a little bit.
You'll get 10%.
But I think having a sophisticated, multi-generation organization like Chin, having a sophisticated, well-managed, nonprofit that's making a difference like Obama, I think we can put together the conversations and ask the questions to talk about areas, because I believe there's some areas that are emerging right before our eyes that didn't exist 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like 10 years ago, very few people were talking about electric vehicles.
Yep.
10 years ago, very few people were talking about sustainable energy. A few years ago, nobody, I think all of us again in Chicago, we talk about Canadian wildfires, create this bad air. Canadian wildfires. I got to the point where I said, Canadian wildfire where? Where is this air actually coming from? But the point is, if you are, compromised, and so air quality, these kinds of things are issues. We're seeing water. Who knew water was going to be the issue that has become over the last week? Ask people in Vermont about this. And so again, there's some things that are calling us out to say these are areas worthy of our attention. They are going to require public investment. Where there is public investment, there is a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in the contracting area. And so we need to be doing some opportunity analysis. We need to do data to do that opportunity analysis. One of the things we do at the state is every year we produce a report on how all of the agencies spent money have done with meeting their diversity goals. Oftentimes these reports are generated, they have all the data, they're made available online, you can download them as a PDF file, and nobody looks at them. And so you can see agencies that have, so when people say, well, I don't do business with the state. Okay, is that the University of Illinois?
Right.
Is that the Illinois Department of Transportation? Is that the tollway? Which state would you be talking about in specific? Because you have to narrow your focus as you begin to onboard your opportunity. And it comes down also to something as fundamental as relationships. If there's an agency that'll talk with you, that'll work with you, that'll show you what their needs are, and you can have a conversation, well, then you can maybe figure out how I can serve them. And I like to, at this point, give my hats off to, I think the people in transportation do a better job than many agencies. Mm-hmm. The tollway has a commitment to technical assistance. Yes. The CTA has a wonderful group of people down there that's focusing on MBE utilization, DBE programming. They have more information than you can shake a stick at, and nobody asking for it. Yeah. Whereas some agencies, you got to walk in there with the FBI to get the information. You know, the FBI has to be, who is that guy? Yeah, you don't want to talk to him, because if he says something, it's going to be some trouble around here. So you got to bring the FBI to get the information. But we're providing this data, and we need community-based organizations, businesses, chambers, small groups, coffee clubs meeting on Saturday to pour through this data, to unravel some of this. And when we hear about things happening like multi-year airport expansion, you know, $1 billion coming to the state of Illinois for roads, highways, and bridges, money being spent on clean energy, moving in the direction. You know, there's talk, the governor's made talk about wanting to see 1 million EVs on the road in the next 10 years. Well, where are these things going to be charged?
Right.
What are they going to plug into? And is the grid ready for them being? No, it's not. And so these are the real data-driven opportunities that should make us think about some businesses that we could be in, and smart entrepreneurs pivot. They say, you know, I wasn't thinking about this, but now that the business case has been made, and I have somebody that's willing to work with me, and I've got a mentor, and I could be a protege, and I could put a team together, and I could do, so there are probably some people working on the Obama project. They're doing some things that they never did before in the history of their business. But because the opportunity presented itself, now they're doing some, you know, some engineering delivery and some other kinds of services they weren't doing before. So we have to be opportunity hungry. Mm-hmm. We have to be opportunity driven. Not just something that's within our comfort zone, but something that sounds like we can unravel it, get our hands around it, and I guarantee you, you are capable of things that you have yet even to imagine. Give yourself credit. Know that you can find out. And then just like the sister in the back mentioned, we've got universities. We've got places of resource. We've got, you know, other technical assistance providers that can say, hey, could you help? And ask for help. Mm-hmm. Don't be so cocky and confident. Ask, say, you know, have that kind of Columbo approach. Can you explain it to me again? I don't really get it. You know, Columbo played the nut role and busted everybody that could need to be busted. Because he acted like he didn't know what's going on, but only to get people to spill the beans, he said, okay, no, I got you. So then you do the same thing. So you can just explain this to me a little more. I just don't kind of get it. Just keep asking questions. Say, man, I'm tired of you. Here's the contract. Get out of here. Yeah. You know, that's the way it can happen.
In the interest of time, I won't go over any more questions. I do want to open it up to any Q&A.
I'd like to ask the sister from New York, that affirmation tower that R. Donahue Peebles, the black guy, millionaire in New York City, might want to run for mayor of New York City as Republican later on. What is the current status of that affirmation tower in New York City? Do you know?
I don't know. I've been here since December. I do go back and forth, and I believe I met Mr. Peoples. You mean Mr. Peoples, who's the construction guru, the black man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just met him. You know, I told you, I came from a different world. My clients were Pfizer, you know, Boeing. And so I always knew who I was, but now I'm getting a taste of who I am and who I have to let other people know who I am. So.
Because that affirmation tower's a god awful ugly looking building.
Yeah, I don't know that, but I was telling Tammy that.
That's why it's in New York and not Chicago.
There's a question over here.
You over here?
I don't know where this fit in. Bruce, I was talking about, generational wealth. And I moved to Chicago in 1985. We had all these black businesses. And somewhere in that generation, they had businesses, but we got caught up in the corporate world. So how do we go back to, that should be in the data, like the Army and Lou, the docs, all these people were generational, but our age group went to college. And then we didn't want to go into the family business. And then at age 50, we lose our jobs. How do we tap, I don't know where that fit in, so that was on my mind when you said that. That's still generational wealth, but they got a gap. How do we reach back to that? Do you understand?
I grew up in that experience. You know, many of my friends' parents were starting these companies like Soft Sheen and Johnson Products and Bush Construction and, you know, all of these firms. And for the most part, many of them did not make the transition. Very few of the children, like myself, where, you know, they did not want to follow. Some did. A friend of mine, you know, Eric Johnson, his father founded Johnson Products. He did not go in that direction, but he ultimately went to work for another neighborhood business, Baldwin Ice Cream, and now he's the president of Baldwin Richardson Foods, which is about a, I don't know, $250 million business. So some did, but I think, you know, Eileen certainly could speak to this very critical point of, and that's another thing that, you know, entrepreneurs, you know, need to have both a near-term and a long game. To realize that, you know, I feel a lot of people have thrown this name generational wealth around inappropriately.
I agree.
And don't have a long game. Aren't doing things to set up themselves, their families, and their, you know, grandchildren and those kinds of things. And then again, it's also, it doesn't mean just parochial family. You know, I'm sure that there are, within your business, that there are some second generation folks that are, you know, other families that have been with the Chins along this whole experience. And they're just as much as your family is your sister and brother.
Correct.
And so that's the kind of attitude that you have to adopt and recognize, and I'm sure you recognize it, that you have a bigger commitment, not just to your personal family, but to the maintaining of this vision that your parents, and like you say, your parents were helped, the grandparents were helped. There was that community of support. So we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems today and ecosystem service providers. And I think all of this room is representative of the fact that once you look for it, you'll find that it does exist, that there are people willing to help, service providers, role models. I would be talking to this lady right here and saying, you know, what were the secrets that your father and passed down to you that now are some of the cornerstones of what drives you to do what you're doing so that generational wealth becomes a reality.
But let me just add, just real quick, you know, to your point is that I never wanted to go into the business with my dad. I said, you know, when I was in college, I said, I don't want to do that. But, you know, I worked outside the business and I saw what my dad was doing. And the problem is that when you start a company, you're a working owner, right? And you can't do anything but work, and you can't think about anything but the future. I said, I worked outside the business in a small company, and that's where I kind of sparked my entrepreneurial spirit. And I said to my dad, I go, listen, how about I join you? I'm not an engineer. He's the engineer. So what I brought was something he didn't even have: marketing, strategy, communications. He did not want to touch anything to do with operations and administration. He just wanted to do what he knew, engineering, construction, right? And so luckily we had that synergy. And I'm thinking about, like to Bruce's point, you have to think about succession. But when you're a working owner, you can't think beyond what's going to happen next week sometimes. And I think that that's where the real struggle is. It's easy to start a business. It's super hard to sustain it and grow it. So, to Bruce's point, I mean, I have 2 kids. I don't know if they ever want to go into this business, and I'm not going to make them. But what I will tell them is that there's so many aspects of aspects within a business. I don't need you to be an engineer to be in my business. I said, if you want to go into finance, I could use a good CFO someday, right? And the same thing with we have real longevity in our firm, which I'm super proud of. We have about 10 people who have been with our company for 20 years or more. And we've seen their families grow up. And to the point where we have a next generation who are coming in as construction inspectors, learning. We had just one of my guys, his son went to college and couldn't handle the remote in COVID, and he's like, I gotta explore something. Brought him on to introduce him to construction, and I think he's here to stay. So, I think that those are just some perspectives. And then when you talk about generational wealth, there's another side to it, because certification programs, they put limits on you. Right, and that's another whole big topic of that you have to have their personal wealth limits to stay in the program. So there's a couple challenges that we have to defeat, but I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective, and happy to always talk with anybody in the room, to give any business sense if I can.
Thank you.
Can I just make one quick comment? Yeah. I think that coming from a millennial perspective, when we say the word generational wealth versus generational business, I think that there's a distinct difference there. I think when we're talking about generational wealth, we're talking about empowering a family with economic freedom in order to be able to make whatever choices they want in the future and be free with those choices. But I think what the two of you are referring to is generation business. And I think there's a very distinct difference there as we think about those ideas. And so I think sometimes the younger generation sees the speak a little bit differently. And so I just wanted to share that tidbit and just shed a little light there. You know what I mean? So when, like Tammy's talking about what we're working on, it's of course, getting as many workers as possible and getting people interested, but it's also about creating economic freedom for the families that work with us. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
And that's our director of procurement.